When my son told me it was no longer my home, I did not answer right away. I just stood there, holding the warm cup of tea in my hands, feeling the steam fade slowly. The house felt colder than ever. The walls, once full of laughter and memories, sounded so empty. I never imagined I would hear such words from the child I raised with my whole heart. I remember the day we first moved into this house. It was small back then, almost broken. The windows rattled in the wind and the roof leaked in the rain. But I worked hard. I painted the walls myself, scrubbing the floors until my hands hurt. I cooked every meal, saved every rupee, and turned this place into a real home. I used to say, one day, this house will welcome grandchildren. And I smiled at the thought. As years passed, my son grew into a kind man. He studied, found a job, and became successful. I supported him quietly, always staying in the background. When he fell in love and got married, I welcomed his wife with open arms. I prepared sweet tea, set the table, and smiled at her like she was my own daughter. I wanted peace. I wanted family. At first, everything was fine. We shared meals at the same table. We laughed about small things. I helped with chores, waking up early before anyone else. I thought we were building something stronger together. But slowly, the air changed. I began to notice whispered conversations behind closed doors. My tea sat untouched. My chair at the dinner table was moved a little further each day. It was small, but I noticed. Mothers always notice. One evening, as I stood by the window watching the rain slide down the glass, my daughter-in-law walked into the kitchen. She placed new plates on the shelves, replacing the old ones I had kept for years. She cleared the decorations I once chose. She barely looked at me. I gently asked, "Do you need help?" "No," she said, her voice cool. "Things are changing. It's time." I did not understand. Time for what? Later that night, I heard her whisper to my son, "We need space. She is still here. And this is our home now." My heart sank a little, but I stayed calm. I believed it would pass. The next morning, my son asked me to sit. His voice was polite, almost rehearsed. "Ma, maybe you should think about living somewhere else. It's different now." My hands trembled. I looked around the room. Every corner held a memory of my journey, but my voice stayed soft. "Is this not my home anymore?" I asked. He looked at the floor. "It's better if you leave." And in that moment, the home I built stopped belonging to me. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in my small room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. Every tick of the clock felt heavier than the last. I wondered how things changed so quietly, without any loud fights, without any clear reason. Sometimes, silence hurts more than shouting. In the morning, I woke early as always. I prepared breakfast out of habit, parathas, chai, and a small bowl of yogurt. But when they came to the table, my daughter-in-law whispered to my son, and they ate toast separately, not touching anything I made. I sat there, pretending not to notice, as my tea grew cold in front of me. Later, I walked through the hallway, touching the walls lightly. I remembered painting them yellow because the color reminded me of sunshine. When times were hard, that brightness comforted me. But now, the paint felt dull, like memories fading. In the afternoon, I folded my granddaughter's clothes. She smiled when I placed a small flower clip in her hair. For a moment, I felt useful again. But my daughter-in-law walked in, took the clip out, and said softly, "Please don't interfere. I have my own way." I apologized quietly. My voice felt as light as dust. That evening, I overheard them discussing renovation plans. "We'll change the flooring, repaint the walls, maybe remove that old cabinet," she said. "It will finally feel like ours." Ours, the word echoed sharply. I wondered if my presence had become just an old piece of furniture, ready to be removed. When dinner time came, there were only 2 plates on the table. My son cleared his throat. "Ma, we thought you might prefer eating in your room, privacy." I nodded gently. I felt my heart bend, but not break. I carried my plate alone, sitting quietly by the window where the moonlight spilled in. Every bite tasted like memories I could not swallow. That night, I opened a small wooden box I kept hidden. Inside were letters from my late husband, old family photos, and tiny souvenirs of festivals. I ran my fingers over the edges of each memory. Tears came, silent and slow. Not because of anger, but because I realized I was already gone in their hearts, long before they asked me to leave. Before sleeping, I whispered a small prayer. "Give me strength. Give them wisdom." In the hallway, I heard laughter. Light, happy, free. The house was moving on without me. room by room, smile by smile, and I wondered if leaving was not just something they wanted, but something they already prepared for. Asterisk, if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real stories that speak softly but deeply. The next few days passed slowly, like a long walk under heavy rain. No one said anything directly, but their silence formed walls I could not climb. My daughter-in-law stopped leaving the kitchen cabinets open for me to reach. My son stopped asking if I wanted to join them for tea. The smallest changes hurt the deepest. One evening, I was ironing clothes in the living room when I heard them whispering again. I did not mean to listen, but their voices floated through the door. She does not understand boundaries, my daughter-in-law said. She watches everything I do. My son sighed. She has lived here all her life. Maybe she just needs time. No, she replied firmly. I need space. I feel like I am the guest here. Guest. In the home, I cleaned, repaired, and built, piece by piece. I folded the last shirt quietly and returned to my room. I pressed my hand against my chest, gently, as if holding a broken piece in place. The next morning, I decided to step out early for a short walk. The street smelled of fresh bread and dew. Children waited for school buses. The world outside seemed normal. I sat on a bench and watched people rushing to their lives. I wondered if any mother ever felt fully prepared to let go. When I returned, I found my old photo frames removed from the shelf. They were placed inside a box near my room door, not broken, just quietly replaced. A simple message: we are decorating differently now. Later that afternoon, my granddaughter ran to me with her small arms open. I hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of innocence and safety. But my daughter-in-law called her sharply. Do not trouble Grandma. It felt like a wall had been built between me and the only small hand reaching for me. That night, I cooked a simple meal. My son walked into the kitchen and looked surprised. Ma, you did not have to cook. I smiled softly. I know, I just wanted to. He hesitated, then said, we will order takeout tonight. I watched them eat boxes of food at the table while I washed the pans quietly behind them. No one looked back. After they went to bed, I sat alone on the sofa, staring into the dim light. I wondered how love changes shape, how presence can slowly become inconvenience. I thought about mothers across the world, letting go quietly so their children could feel bigger. Before I went to sleep, I whispered to the dark room, maybe soon, they will not even notice when my door is closed forever. And in that thought, a small tear found its way down my cheek. A few days later, the house felt unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your heartbeat sound too loud. I was sitting by the window, knitting a small sweater for my granddaughter. My hands moved, but my thoughts drifted far away. I wondered if this home still had space for my memories. In the evening, my son returned from work. He did not smile like he used to. He sat at the edge of the sofa, tapping his fingers nervously. My daughter-in-law joined him, her arms crossed. The air felt heavy. Ma, my son began softly, we want to talk. I placed my knitting down slowly. Yes, Beta, I am listening. He swallowed hard. We think it would be better if you moved into a small apartment nearby, somewhere you can have peace, your own space. I blinked. But I already have peace here, I said gently. This has been my home for years. My daughter-in-law leaned forward. We need to build our life. We feel watched. We feel judged without words. We need privacy. Her voice was calm, but sharp. I tried to smile. I never meant to make you uncomfortable. I only wanted to help. It is no one's fault, my son added quickly. It is just time for change. I felt something inside me crumble quietly. Time for change, I repeated softly. They showed me a brochure of a small, rented room, far smaller than any corner of this house. My hands trembled as I held it. My son placed his hand over mine. We will still visit, he promised. Promises sometimes feel like thin paper, easy to fold, easy to tear. That night, I could not sleep. The moonlight spilled across my room, cold and silver. I packed a small bag quietly, just clothes, old photos, and one of my husband's letters. I walked through the house one last time. I touched the dining table, where we once shared smiles. The doorway where my son took his first step. The wall where I marked his height as he grew taller. Every corner whispered, stay, but voices in the bedrooms whispered louder, leave. The next morning, when they found me in the hallway with my bag, my son looked relieved and sad at the same time. Are you sure? He asked. I nodded slowly. I do not want to stay where I am no longer needed. My granddaughter hugged my leg. Grandma, why are you going? I knelt and cupped her face. I am not leaving you, my love. I am just moving my heart somewhere quieter. As I walked toward the door, no one stopped me. The house did not either. It simply stood there, silent, like a stranger. When the door closed behind me, the sound felt final. If this part touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more gentle, emotional stories you can listen to with a quiet mind. The small apartment they chose for me was on the third floor of an old building. The walls were plain. The windows faced the back alley where no sunlight reached. When I entered, the silence felt deeper than anything I had ever known. I placed my small bag on the corner of the bed and sat down slowly. The mattress was firm, unfamiliar. It did not carry the softness of memories. For the first time in many years, I was alone. The landlord showed me the kitchen. It was narrow, with only one stove. It is simple, he said, but good enough. Good enough, I nodded politely. Mothers learn to accept what is left. That evening, I unpacked quietly. I placed my husband's letter inside the top drawer. I hung my clothes neatly. I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the tiny window. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of distant cooking from other homes where families laughed, fought, and forgave. Outside, the city lights flickered like tired hearts. I watched people walk past, holding bags, holding hands, holding purpose. I held a cup of tea and a quiet ache. Days passed. My son called sometimes, short calls, quick questions. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I answered yes, even when my voice shook. My daughter-in-law never came on the line. Maybe she did not know what to say, or maybe she already said too much. I tried to keep busy. I cooked small meals, though most of it went untouched. I washed my cup slowly, as if it were a task large enough to fill time. I sat by the window and watched strangers pass by, just so I could feel not completely alone. One afternoon, when rain tapped gently against the glass, I opened my wooden box. I reread my husband's letter. His handwriting was soft and slanted. If life becomes too loud, find quiet inside yourself, he had written. If people forget your worth, remember your own. I pressed the paper against my chest and whispered, I am trying. A week later, I gathered courage to visit my old home. I stood across the street, watching the windows. I hoped to see my granddaughter's smile, even from afar. But the curtains were closed. The walls were new. The paint had changed. The cabinet was gone. The home I built was no longer visible. I did not go to the door. Some doors are not meant to be knocked twice. I walked back slowly, with rain soaking my shawl. People rushed past me, searching for shelter. I did not run. Sometimes, when life rains on you, standing still teaches you more than hiding. Back in my room, I made a small cup of soup. I sat quietly. Something felt different, not stronger, but clearer. I said softly to myself, maybe a mother is not meant to stay. Maybe she is meant to build, and then step away. And in that moment, the quiet walls did not feel so empty. One afternoon, as I sat quietly sewing a small handkerchief, I heard a gentle knock on my door. It startled me, because no one ever came without calling first. I placed the needle down carefully and opened the door. To my surprise, my granddaughter stood there, holding her school bag and smiling shyly. Grandma, she whispered. Mama was busy. Papa dropped me at your place. My heart lifted softly, like a curtain letting in sunlight. Come inside, my child, I said, guiding her in. Her shoes tapped lightly against the cold floor, bringing life into the room. She sat on the bed and looked around. It is small, she said honestly, but it smells like you. I could not tell if she meant it as comfort or truth, but I smiled anyway. I prepared a small snack for her, just simple biscuits and warm milk. She ate quietly, her legs swinging gently. Do you miss home? She asked suddenly. I paused. This is also a home, I answered softly. But yes, sometimes I miss the feeling of family. She nodded thoughtfully. Mama says you needed your own space. I took a long breath. Sometimes grown-ups say things to make themselves feel better. She leaned closer. I miss you there. The words landed deeply, like seeds in soft soil. Later, my son came to pick her up. He looked a little uncomfortable, seeing my small room. Ma, I hope you are settling in, he said, glancing at the walls, as if measuring their distance. I smiled gently. I am learning. When they left, the room fell quiet again, but this time, the silence felt warmer. A memory had just walked in and sat beside me. Days passed, and I began receiving small visits once a week from my granddaughter. She brought drawings, stories, and laughter. My room slowly began to smell like crayons and hope. On one visit, she handed me a folded note. "Papa said to give you this," she whispered. It was from my son. His handwriting was short, hesitant. "Ma, I hope you understand. Things are better now. We will visit when we can." Better, the word stung quietly. Better did not always mean kinder. One evening, I stood by my window, watching families gather inside warm homes. I wondered if mothers ever truly stop being the center, or if life simply moves them to the edges. Still, every visit from my granddaughter brought a soft bloom into my lonely days. One night, as I prepared tea, I looked around my small kitchen. The walls no longer felt unfamiliar. My cup had a place. My chair had a dent where I sat every morning. Tiny signs that I had planted myself gently. I whispered, "Maybe this is where I learned to love myself again." And for the first time in weeks, I tasted my tea and felt its warmth settle deeply. If this part touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more gentle, emotional stories that whisper truth into quiet rooms. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled softly in the distance, I sat by my window sipping warm tea. The raindrops tapped against the glass like someone asking to be let in. I wrapped my shawl tighter and tried to quiet the thoughts in my mind. It had been almost a month since I left my old home. Suddenly, there was another knock at my door. This time, it was louder, heavier. When I opened it, I found my neighbor, an older woman who lived just down the hall. She held a worried expression. "I thought you should know," she began gently. "Your daughter-in-law was here earlier this week. I heard her talk to the landlord." My eyes widened slightly. "What did she say?" She hesitated, then continued. "She asked him not to renew your lease after 3 months. She said you would manage on your own, maybe move to another town. She said you were becoming a burden." The words fell into my ears like stones sinking into a river. I felt my hands tremble, though I held them tight against my shawl. "I see," I whispered, thanking her for caring enough to come. When she left, I closed my door and leaned against it. The wall felt colder than ever. I slid slowly to the floor, letting my thoughts unfold. A burden, a mother reduced to inconvenience. I wondered the entire night if I should confront my son. My heart needed answers, but my pride whispered silence. Around midnight, I walked to the tiny kitchen and warmed leftover tea. As the steam rose, I stared at the reflection in the dark window. A woman who built love with her hands, now holding emptiness. The next day, my granddaughter visited again. Her eyes sparkled, unaware of adult storms. She drew a picture of a house with 3 windows and a garden. She pointed to the small figure standing alone by the door. "That is you," she said proudly. "And where are you?" I asked softly. She pointed to a window beside a small drawn woman. "Inside with Mama." Something inside me cracked. When my son arrived later to pick her up, I gathered the courage to speak. "Beta," I said quietly, "why did your wife tell the landlord not to extend my stay?" He froze. His face paled. You know." I nodded. He rubbed his forehead. "Ma, we thought it would be easier. We are planning to move to another city for work soon. We cannot take care of 2 homes." I swallowed slowly. "So the answer was to remove me quietly." He looked down, ashamed. "We did not want to hurt you. Hurt does not always come from loud voices. Sometimes it comes from carefully closed doors." That night, after they left, I sat with my hands folded in my lap. The quiet in the room felt sharp, but in that quiet, something else appeared: clarity. Maybe this was not abandonment. Maybe this was life telling me to walk forward alone. Even if my steps were trembling, I whispered to the empty room, "Just because I am not needed, does not mean I am worthless." And for the first time, I truly believed it. The morning after I learned the truth, I woke earlier than usual. A strange calmness filled my chest, like the quiet moment before sunrise. I sat at the edge of my bed and looked around my small room. It wasn't just walls anymore. It was a space that held my tears, my silence, and slowly, my healing. I made myself tea and let the warm cup rest between my hands. I thought about everything I had given: years of care, patience, sleepless nights, and quiet sacrifices. I had poured love into every corner of that old home, but love is not always returned to the same address. Sometimes, it travels elsewhere. Later that afternoon, I visited a nearby community center I had walked past many times but never entered. A group of elderly women sat together, knitting, painting, laughing softly. A young volunteer greeted me kindly. "Would you like to join us?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. I sat down, and someone placed yarn in my hands. My fingers remembered the motions instantly. Someone beside me asked my name. Another asked about my family. Slowly, gently, words began to find their way out of me. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel like a burden. I felt like a person. Days became warmer. I visited the center often. I taught children simple stitching. I baked small snacks and shared them. Sometimes, my granddaughter visited and joined in, smiling proudly as she sat beside me. This room, filled with laughter and gentle chaos, breathed life into my quiet heart. One evening, as I prepared to leave, the volunteer approached me. "You bring peace here," she said softly. "You make this place feel like home." Her words wrapped around me like a warm shawl. That night, my son called. His voice sounded tired. "Ma," he began, "we are moving next month. It will be harder to visit often." I took a slow breath. "I understand," I said calmly. "Will you be okay?" I smiled, though he could not see it. "I am learning to be." There was a soft pause. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said quietly. "Life is not always kind, but we can choose to be." After we hung up, I stood by my window. Outside, lights shimmered across other homes. I did not envy them anymore. Not every warm window belongs to us. Sometimes, we must build our own glow. I realized then that leaving was not the end. It was the beginning of seeing myself not as a mother left behind, but as a woman rediscovering her worth. As I lay down to sleep, I whispered into the gentle night, "Home is not always a place. Sometimes, it is a feeling you carry when you choose yourself." And for the first time in many years, I slept peacefully, knowing I belonged to my own heart again. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these quiet stories find a warm place to land.